Hello, another Friday. Welcome everybody to Elephant in the Room. We are so happy to see all of you here. Thank you for your full support. Yes, how are you, Taranjeet, today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's an amazing feeling, to be honest, to hit this Friday. We are currently in our what? I've lost count, 35th episode or thereabouts.
We
And
are
who would have ever
38.
imagined? Sorry,
We are 38, 38.
38. There we go. It's 38 episodes. Wow.
Yeah,
So
if we
yeah,
didn't
it's
prior break, we would have hit 40 this today. But
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I'm very impressed that we've had the perseverance to see this through. But more importantly, the learnings for us has been absolutely immense, to be honest. So Mihan, what do we have planned today?
So we have another exciting show today to finish up our particular the sub segment, not the full segment, because next week we are continuing with the same themes. But more importantly, we wanted to just highlight what we've been doing for the last few days with the different guests in that sense. And we all agreed moving forward, not moving forward, it is the reality now, and we are in this new reality. Shouldn't even call it new, it's the current reality. So we started the talk about the ways of learning need to be enhanced and changed. We also talk about this whole idea of how do we address the reality that we are in today, that we was with Zorab on Wednesday. And yesterday we talked about this idea of agility together with Damiri. So it has been a very, very interesting conversation. Um, Taranjit?
Sure. So today the idea is to take it one step further, and the elephant in the room essentially is around the whole area of mental health and well-being. Through all the discussions that we've seen on social media, our own discussions with clients, you find that people are actually thinking about it, but nobody is actually talking about this because it seems like it's a little bit of a taboo subject. And I'm not sure why. Maybe because we're not ready to talk about it, or maybe because it's something that somebody else should do, not us as an employer. So we have the absolute delight and pleasure to have Malathi Kanagasabapathy to join us today. Malathi has a master's in health services and began her public health career in 1995, and that's quite some way ago. 2.5 decades of experiences in various areas of NGOs and government agencies as a whole. Malathi is a highly motivated and experienced executive and extends her skills across the globe. Here she is when we're talking about the area of strategic development of programs, not only in Australia and Nepal, New York, and boy, can they use it right now, but also Malaysia. She's driven by her passion for grassroots change and that supports an improved quality of life for those who are disadvantaged. Malathi is presently the executive director with the Refugee and Immigration rather Legal Services. In acronym is RAILS in Queensland, Australia. Malathi, it's our absolute delight to have you here with us in Elephant in the Room. Welcome, Malathi.
Thank you, Taranjeet and Milan. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today on a Friday afternoon. And honestly, hats off to both of you for actually making this part of your episode, because mental health and wellness is an essential part of our employment and the changes that are occurring across the globe. So thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. No, it's our pleasure. Muyan, back to you.
Great. So we just want to quickly just welcome those who have just joined us in Elephant in the Room. Welcome to another episode. Today we have Malathi here from Brisbane as our guest, and we want to focus on mental well-being and mental health, in particular in the current reality that we are all facing and living with in that sense, right?
Mhm.
So with that, maybe I want to quickly just ask you an opening question, Mel. It's okay to call you Mel, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does the reality look like for maybe employees given the air of uncertainty as a result of the pandemic and then leading on to economic uh, pressures and recession, so of expected recessions, and in that sense, leading to any mental health and well-being consideration. Maybe would like to get you to share that bigger picture perspective with us and our audience.
Yeah, look, I think, thank you. Thanks for the question. I think it'll be important for me to sort of provide a bit of a landscape view of what's occurring in Australia, and then sort of zone into that part of the question, if I could, please. So, as you're aware, Australia's got 26 million people as a population base. When COVID-19 hit Australia, we're geographically quite well located, so we were able to sort of shut down our borders and enforce some really good leadership through our current Prime Minister to ensure that we were protected. So our current state at the present moment, we've got about 7,000, just over 7,000 confirmed cases, of which we've lost about 103 odd individuals. And we have at the present moment an increase in jobless numbers from March, which was sitting at 5.2%, that shot up to 6.2% in April. And there's a significant number of people when this actually occurred, when the government decided that we needed to sort of economically as well shut down all the businesses that were thriving. That meant that over 863,000 businesses had to put 6 million people onto a JobKeeper allowance that the government was offering. What that also meant, it sort of started to sort of a snowball effect of what that meant to an individual from a mental perspective, the impact it would have on their home front, their financial capability to pay their home loans, their ability to sort of keep their kids in school, then the uncertainty around this. So this whole decision that the government had to make was a really tough decision, because not only did it have an economic impact, they knew it was going to have a huge mental and well-being effect on the population at large. So that brought them into an environment where they thought, okay, we'll need to make sure that we buffer that as we come out of it now.
Okay, and that's good. So there is definitely some thoughts around this. So let's zoom in a little bit further. We've talked about the bigger landscape. What are the ramifications of this on the individual? Because you do have 6 million odd people that are currently put onto abeyance for now, whilst these businesses
Yeah.
have gone into a temporary suspense mode. What would be the ramifications? Are you seeing anything playing out right now?
Yeah, look, I think just to sort of tag with what I said, if you've had to make a huge decision, um, as in a leadership perspective, and each state premier is then having to sort of implement significant change within their businesses, that snowball effect meant that all the individuals who are casuals, youngsters, international students, um, people living uh, in and amongst the COVID environment were struck with not just economic failure, but trying to deal. I've just lost my train of thought. Just trying to deal with the impact of coming into a world where there was a lot of uncertainty, lack of cash, lack of comfort, lack of knowledge of what do I do next, the seriousness of homelessness that they were about to face. There was an increase in domestic violence cases, abuse of alcohol, because they weren't able to actually deal with the situation very well. Um, Lack of motivation to stay involved or connected. So you start to see all of this unravel in different forms. And as leaders of organizations, you needed to be well equipped to handle that in a manner that not just meant you were going to lose staff, but you also were going to try and support them and keep them engaged wherever possible.
Okay, so just 1 minute. Let's hold that thought. So here we are, and we've been hearing this all this 35, 38 episodes or thereabouts at the area around the virtuality. And that's going to be the case moving forward as well, whether I'm at university or I'm at home. Maybe the manufacturing sector could be slightly different, but at least from a services sector, working from home is going to be it. And this was something that I raised yesterday when we were talking to Damiri. The whole area now about the social network
Right.
that we as human beings and humanity as a whole, we thrive on. That ability to interact, that ability to connect and work off each other and feed off each other, because there is that energy and that there's a level of motivation and engagement that we are bringing to the table. Now, by us sitting down and having this conversation, and this
Yeah.
is only half an hour, but I've got these conversations running for 8 hours at a time,
Right.
with different people and different stakeholders and customer. How is that going to play out from a mental health and well-being perspective, Malathi?
And that's a question I think a lot of professionals are asking. We've enforced this need for all our employees to go into their home environments, establish a workplace in their home environments, and then connect back in and continue to work and be productive and be engaged and deliver on our KPIs. And we don't know the actual impact of that continued workplace being conducted in this manner. I think it's going to be difficult for us to sort of really understand that impact right now, because there isn't a significant amount of research that's occurring. But I think we'll start to see that the ramifications of us actually working in this manner for an extended period of time start to unfold down the track. I mean, with my hat on as an exec working in an office where we've had face-to-face contact with our clients on a daily basis, to suddenly go down the route of saying, no, we can't do that. We literally have to have this social distancing. We literally have to sort of change the way we work, meant that you suddenly need to think quite innovatively on how do I engage with my client? How do I continue to provide a legal service for this individual? And continue to feel that I'm actually delivering what I was meant to be delivering. Those kinds of changes, which people have had to make quite quickly, we're not going to start to see the impact of that just yet. I think down the track we'll start to see how that really sort of impacted their connection with people, their ability to articulate with individuals, the ability to identify certain behavior changes that you'd probably do in a boardroom, where you've got people sitting around you, or even understand, how do I actually establish a network without clicking a couple of buttons and inviting people to join me online. So all of that change that I'm having to make, and my colleagues are having to make, I think we'll only start to see down the track, maybe in a couple of years. And I think that's going to be interesting to sort of unravel.
Great, great. So maybe just wanted to take this time to maybe just do some shout out to our audience who have joined us. And of course, some of it are your friends, Mel. I think they are supported. So we have Surya here, Surya Ramachandran. You probably know her.
I do know Surya.
We have Dr. Michael Heng from Singapore, our long-time supporter. We also have Ranjit from Lekker. Ranjit Grimal, thanks for tuning in. Next is my good friend Chong Sulim. Thank you, Sulim, for Sulim support me from one show to another. I was on another show about an hour ago. She was there as well. So thank you so much, Sulim. Appreciate it. Next person is we have Kishanjit Dylan. Thank you for being here. Of course, we have Zorab as well. Zorab, thanks for tuning in. Now, wanted to maybe just quickly highlight one point that I think Dr. Michael Heng raised. He asked about this question of how does COVID-19 mental health affects different from the usual anxieties of normal joblessness and uncertainty. Is there a difference? And if so, what it is and how is the impact?
Thank you for that. That's actually a really good question. And it's sometimes really hard to pinpoint whether there is a fine line between what's occurring now and what people would have faced before COVID-19. Look, I think I would have to say that from my observation, that there is a slight difference. The anxiety levels are probably heightened because while they may have faced a crisis situation, and they may have been meandering through the system to try and figure out how to overcome their joblessness or maybe their own mental health issues. The fact that now it's exacerbated by there's a pandemic. There are people around me that are facing similar situations. I've got a significant amount of competition, or I'm isolated. I can't connect with anyone that I usually connect with. I can't access medical services that I thought I could easily. There's challenges around cost and medical costs. If I'm unemployed, how am I going to maintain that? All of those bits and pieces that we would have normally dealt with through support structures are now being exacerbated through the fact that it's in your face most of the time. So that's difficult for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And I think what also now impacts us quite a bit, and we've heard this several times from the likes of Nina Yassin, the HRD from Aquinas, as well as from some of the other guests, the line between work and family has just disappeared.
Yeah.
So in the old days, when I get into the car in the basement, I on the car and I'm listening to the radio as I go back home, I'm now switching off and entering into a family mode. And the next day when
Correct.
I start the car and I go back into office, I'm entering into a work mode. But that's not the case anymore because
Correct.
because the family and the work has actually intermingled and if not merged transparently.
Correct.
So how do you see this playing out in Australia? Is that a reality that is hitting us as well?
Yeah, I think, interestingly, I mean, I talked to a few people through the offices or through colleagues that I naturally engage with. Some people deal with it quite well. So some people are quite comfortable with the fact that, I've reduced my costs and having to actually commute. But the prolongedness of this is hard on the individual. So if you've got the choice at the end of the day, if you're given the choice to say you can work from home certain days and then we need you back in the office on certain days, people are a little bit more open to that concept because it allows them, as you say, to partition that life,
Yeah,
to say, okay,
yeah,
I've got family time and then I've got to be in the office. I've got the option. But for those who are confined in an environment to say, no, you just can't come into the office because we don't have a vaccine yet, and we haven't got a solution for our actual work environment. Social distancing can't be addressed in our environment, so you have to stay in your workplace, in your home, and
yep,
continue to work. And
yep,
that can be difficult, and it can be difficult on many levels because if I'm living in a small apartment where I don't have a lot of visibility of the outside world, that can send anyone up a tree. You kind of get to a point where you think, I can't do this every day. I need to
yep,
get out. I need to do something. And I think it
absolutely.
varies. So to answer your question, I guess that really comes down to that individual coping mechanisms of how that person is meant to be trying to sort of maintain this for an extended period of time. And it
And,
ties in with what Johan asked me earlier about the ramifications, prolonged ramifications of this. Yeah.
and I
Sorry, go
think
ahead.
that's where and that's where I think that coping mechanism, and I don't want to belabor this, but that could also then lead to the social related issues that are, because that's one way in which I cope wrongly, but that's one way in which the individual copes.
True.
Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of individuals cope that way. A lot of individuals find themselves as an outlet. I'm going to the office, see ya,
Yeah,
and I'm going to interact with a different bunch of people for 8 hours of the day, and not have to deal with the home front, and then
yeah,
deal with the home front in a different manner.
yeah.
So yeah, people do find that as an outlet, but I think I have to recognize though that. It's important for us, and I think from the last speaker, Dermiri,
Yes.
articulated the need for agility between the workforce, home environment, the work-life balance element of this is very important. and it is our reality now, as you said. So
Okay.
we're not going to return to a full-time in the office environment, I don't think.
Got you. So very quickly, cognizant of time, we have a
Yeah.
very good question here raised by Kishanjeet. Nuhan, if you could help me, there you go. Would the short-term gains in productivity from remote working eventually be offset by a drop in productivity long-term due to mental health considerations? That's a really good question.
It is. So if I just reiterate that, so you're looking at the short-term gains in productivity from working remotely. Would that actually have a significant drop in productivity long term due to mental illness? I guess it depends on the sector that the person is working in, and the expectations that drive the employer to establish those KPIs, and that's a hard one to answer in the sense of saying a yes or a no, because it really comes down to one, the sector, the actual structure that's been put into place around performance measurement and performance achieved over a period of time. But the impact on the mental health issue, I guess, would be largely driven by am I doing the best I can in this job that I've chosen to continue to work in this structure and in this way? Um, and it's really a question you ask yourself most of the time. So I think the long-term productivity. I'd be a little bit worried to sort of answer that question with a yes or a no. But it's a good question. It's something for us to sort of consider as we progress forward.
Okay. So thanks for that. We have two other questions which we cognizant a bit of time, but maybe I think it's good that I flesh it out and have your point of view.
Sure.
First is Zorab. So Zorab says the cost of mental health is also caused by employees' own doing. For example, being complacent, overselling, over delegating, or underperforming. All this while even before remote working situation. Hence, the employer are not to be blamed. So for sure, the stress is greater now because the delivery is expected in isolation. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to that question, if I may approach them that way. So the initial statement, I guess you make, where the cause of mental health issues related to an employee bringing that on board themselves. So I think we need to understand here, what do we mean by mental health in the concept of lack of performance or inability to comply? What's causing that issue? It might not be just the mental health perspective. It could be other elements of that person's individual lifestyle or aspects or expectations of themselves. Sorry, do you mind bringing that question up again? The second part of the question is whether it's not the employee. It's not the employee. Well, true. You can't blame the employer for everything. But the employer does need to take some level of accountability of how are you providing, what sort of an environment are you providing that is conducive enough for this individual to actually perform or excel in their performance? Do they have the right tools? Do they have the right support? And do they have the right understanding of what's expected of them? So that's the responsibility you have as an employer or a leader in this environment. And for sure, the stress is greater now for delivery of Yeah, that's true. Depending on the sector, once again. So if you're in sales and you're expected to do certain things online to increase productivity or your margin, and you're not doing it as well, perhaps you're not right for the job in that sense, and your skill sets are better where you're interacting with someone one-on-one because you got the gift of the gab. So I think it really depends on the sector, and the relationship that you've actually established with the employer before this COVID-19 environment as well.
I think I just wanted to give a perspective on that because we do see that quite a bit for certain individuals. While they may not be able to deliver what is necessary, they are very good at building quote unquote relationships in the office to mask themselves or maneuver themselves
True.
through the different ranks and hierarchies, so to say. And given this isolated situation, then I think it's harder to do that. If I
True.
may take,
You sort of unpeel the layers, don't you, of an individual. You kind of go, oh, okay, they're not performing as well as they could or should be. Yeah.
So I think that's the glaring one, and as a result of that, stress will come about. Cool. So we have another one by Dr. Michael. Before we ask you the last question to close off, he says that social distancing will still be advised post MCO. The lack of social interaction will definitely negatively affect mental health in a very serious manner. How do we compensate for that in that sense?
So let me just understand the question, if I may, please. So social distancing would still be adverse post. The lack of social interaction would negatively affect mental illness seriously. So how would we compensate for this? That's a big question. How do we compensate? How do we actually, well, I guess you've got to start thinking right now about what it is that you do in the organization, how it is that you actually tackle issues with your staff currently, how are they coping, and then you need to sort of start to shape um, uh, whether it's a compensation of the way they actually work, their performance, or financial. Um, yeah, it's a hard one to answer just on the spot there, but it's a good question. What I'd like to do though is provide you with a response post this this
Yeah,
podcast,
maybe
if
you can
that's all
do.
right. Yeah, if I
Sure.
could think about it and give you a bit of a response.
Cool. So my question to you, and this one is the last one, is as an employer, what would you advise that they can do? Maybe two or three things they can do positively to provide in this area of mental health and social well-being for their
Yeah.
employees.
All right. Thank you, Mian. That's for me an important one, and I sort of really want to sort of zone into leadership style here, if I may. So as an employer, I think it's important that you demonstrate through your own management of self-care strategies and how you actually deliberate and make decisions. You've got to actively manage that quite well as a leader. You've also got to lead by example. You've got to be able to sort of demonstrate. If you're asking your team to do certain things, you need to be able to sort of do that yourself or demonstrate it through your behavior patterns, your articulation of the way that you actually engage with your team. You need to be able to sort of be very empathetic about your communication style and the information that you're sharing with your team. And you need to have a clear roadmap. I think that's an important bit out of this. You need to be quite specific. This is how we're going to, well, when I say roadmap, I mean, I understand this is a reality, but the roadmap is ultimately how are we actually going to, how are we going to operate post this time?
So, and those are really good because it then provides you with a point of focal reference where I can then say these are the type of, and then we can maneuver around that and navigate as the issues come around. One last point, Malathi, from myself
Mm-hmm.
is what would be, we've heard about the employer. What would be the one or two things in terms of some parting words of advice for employees? Folks like you and I who are working for an organization in these very unsettled and troubled times, what would be one of the one or two things that you could provide to us as part of parting thoughts here?
Okay, thank you. I guess just to summarize, yeah, have you heard of a person called Louise Evans? She's the director and founder of Five Chairs. And I just want to elaborate on what she talks about. Five chairs, five choices. And it's literally owning your behavior. It's literally understanding how you articulate, how you cope, and how you engage. I highly recommend everyone having a look at it. It's an 18-minute little video. It's 18 minutes worth of your life of understanding that. But if I may, so there's three things I think I'd leave everyone with. Three fundamental questions that you need to ask yourself when you embark into a journey like this and coming out of a journey like this. It's relevant to an individual as well as organizations. The first question is, what am I trying to achieve out of this? What am I exactly trying to achieve? The second one is, how will I know a change leads to an improvement? And that's your measure question. How will I know that anything that I'm changing is actually leading to an improvement? And your final question to yourself is, what change ideas will lead to an improvement. So if I could very quickly, and I recognize I'm out of time, that if you ask yourself your first question, and if your first question is, look, I really want to sort of improve my self-care. And then the second question is, well, how do you know that change is actually going to lead to an improvement? How are you going to measure that? And then the third one is, well, what ideas am I going to implement? And you can apply it to several aspects of your world. And it'll actually give you some clear steps of what you need to be doing to
I
allow
like it.
yourself to actually function.
I like it. I really like it, and it's very clear. And what would be really good, if I could ask for your assistance, is maybe you could just respond to the Facebook site by providing a link to that exact reference that you just talked about.
I will, for sure.
Okay, good, very nice. Muihan, back to you, bud.
So we have come to the end of the session, but I think want to just get your quick response on this, Mel. I think there was an earlier input to talk about your work with the refugees, and I think just wanted to have a quick one. And this one is from Sujit Bhawan from Perth. So let's talk about that. Working with refugees, you might have come across people who are traumatized and mentally unstable, especially those coming from war-torn countries. So how do you cope with them, and what kind of special services are there in the center that they can get help, and are they put into one center before they get moved out? Maybe just quickly help to elaborate.
Sure. So
Your
I'll just give a bit of an insight to Rails. So Rails is a legal service. So we provide legal advice to refugees and migrants coming into Australia. And you're right, at this point in time, there are a lot of individuals who were on a temporary visa, work visa, who've lost rights to have access to food, to housing, to support. So we're part of a bigger group, of a bigger structure of partners that we engage with. So while we provide advice on, okay, well, you need to get a bridging visa, and you also at the same time need to make sure that you get access to food and shelter. These are the people you need to engage with, and there's government support that's being provided at a state level that allows us to do that for individuals. And you're right, we meet and engage with a multitude of individuals who are faced with some really taxing, challenging times in their life, and we can only do so much. And unfortunately, there's still people who are in detention, still asylum seekers who just don't have a voice. And we just continue to do the best we can, the very limited funding that we've got.
Good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Malathi. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Muihan?
Malathi,
You're
for
welcome.
joining us this evening, and we hope all the best in your work. And maybe if the opportunity arises, we hope to see you once again sometime, right? Okay, so we catch up with you soon. So Taranjeet, quick one, three things, or two things. Three is too long. Two things.
Three so long. So the first thing is we have to keep this on the top of the agenda. And should be top on mind. It has to be top of mind because we need to realize the implications are there. The second one is I really like Malathi's last couple of comments around asking these various questions about what are the type of areas that you want to focus on, because after all, it is specifically to you as an individual, and the implications are to you as an individual. Nobody has control of your life but yourself. So these are the two things that I would take away with, and it's amazing. I would love to have another half an hour to talk about this, but you know what? That's not going to happen. That's the reality of today, Muihan.
It is. So a quick one, just want to leave our audience a quick snippet, and we won't reveal too much for the interest of time, what we are going to experience next week. So we pretty much have lined up all our guests as what I said yesterday. So on Monday, we will be not having any guests. We will be doing our show. But on Tuesday, we have the proud pleasure to have Mr. Kevin Yong with us. Quick introduction of Mr. Kevin. Taranjeet.
So sure. So very quickly, Kevin is a noted recruiter. He's been in the recruitment space for a long time. I've known Kevin personally for some time. I love the way he thinks. I love the way he works, and it's going to be very interesting to hear now a recruitment perspective, a recruiter's perspective to what is required out there given the changes that we are currently experiencing, and that's where Kevin will provide us with some thoughts.
So on Wednesday, We
Go
will
ahead,
have
please go ahead.
we have invited Ranuka Singham to join us. So Ranuka is actually a personal image consultant, or brand image consultant, and she will be joining us to now talk about how the presence, especially in this virtual communication world, is critical, as well as to make sure that what you see on the screen now get actually magnified compared to even face to face. So we
Yes.
wanted to get her insights how that all of us could change the way we behave and look, especially when we are facing the webcam in all our virtual meetings, webinars, talk shows, and so on and so forth. And that is Ranuka on Wednesday. And on Thursday, we have Adli. Quick one on Adli,
Sure.
Ranjit.
So Adli is with Sime Darby Plantations. He's going to give us some insights around where the larger employers are now coming from. And if you see, we are starting to move down that particular route of the segment. Larger employers, what are some of the thoughts that are now going through their minds, and perhaps some reframing if that is actually happening. And that's where Adli is going to be joining us on.
All right. So for Friday, the poster is not out yet, but I think we're having David Jones, right? Maybe you
Yes,
want
absolutely. Now, David Jones, thank you. So, David Jones is the managing director of CMI, which is the Chartered Management Institute UK. It's a delight to have him join us, and we are privileged for him to spend his Friday evening with us. And we'll be talking a little bit about what does it take as a manager for us to now manage these unsettling times. What are some of the things that I now require? And where does CMI, the Chartered Management Institute, come into play in all of this? And the institute is a global institute. It has Royal Charter. I'm privileged to be a board member on the institute for the regional board. Just hearing where David is coming from, the implication of this on managers and the standards of excellence that they need to set for ourselves, especially today, given the unsettlement that we are currently facing. And that's what David's going to be looking at. Muyan?
Great. So we have a very exciting show all laid out for you next week. So please make sure that you join us. So with that, we wish everybody a very good weekend. Take good rest, spend good time with your loved ones, and we'll see you again on Monday evening at 6 o'clock Malaysia time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.